page 126. We're going to divide decimals by decimals. This at the top may not make sense at first, but after I explain it, it might. It says, when dividing a decimal by a decimal, first change the divisor to a whole number by multiplying by a power of 10. This is kind of the main key here. We're going to change the divisor to a whole number. You can actually see that happening. Let's check it out. Then multiply the dividend by the same power of 10. So check this out. Just kind of pay attention to how we're setting this up. This problem is 3 25/100 divided by 0.5. It's right here. But notice we're going to change it from this problem to this problem. So the first step is we're taking this divisor and we're changing it to a whole number. And that's pretty simple. I'm going to explain that two different ways. I'm going to use words like multiplying by a power of 10, but then I'm going to show you how simple that is by simply moving the decimal. So let's read the problem. I'll show you what they do here. And while the words might be confusing, I think you'll notice what we do with the structure. A reads, Ella uses 0 and 5/10 pound of raspberries in each raspberry cake that she makes. How many cakes can Ella make with 3 25/100 pounds of raspberries? So that problem, like I said, starts out as 3 25/100 divided by 0 and 5/10. But what we do is, it says the divisor has one decimal place. And it doesn't quite say this, but it should say we can't divide if the divisor has a decimal place, so we have to get rid of the decimal. Well, how do you get rid of the decimal is you multiply the dividend and the divisor by 10 in this case. And here's why. If you multiply something by 10, just punch it into your calculator. If you multiply 0.5 times 10, it becomes a whole number of 5. And that's what we need to be. So if you multiply this by 10, it's the same thing as move the decimal one place to the right. And if you do that to the divisor, you have to do that to the dividend. So this problem right here actually becomes this. And the point of that is that we already know how to do this problem right here. We learned it on the previous page. You divide, pretending it's a whole number, and then move your decimal straight up. So let me show you, if I were going to do this problem from scratch, let me show you what it would look like. The problem is 3 25/100 divided by 0 and 5/10. So if this was you, you need to notice that right off the bat, the divisor, and we need to practice our words here, this is the divisor. The divisor has a decimal, and we can't divide if the divisor has a decimal. So we multiply it by a power of 10, which is the same thing as moving the decimal one place to the right. 0 and 5/10 times 10 is 5 whole. So we take our decimal and we move it once to the right. Whatever you do to the divisor, you have to do to the dividend. So if I multiply the divisor by 10, I have to multiply the dividend by 10. Now, if this is too messy for you, then you simply rewrite it as 5 and 32.5. Because you get the same answer both ways. I can even prove that to you. Watch. Here's the original problem. 3 25/100 divided by 0 and 5/10. You get 6.5. And here's my new problem. 32.5 divided by 5 is 6 and 5/10. You get the same answer. So since you get the same answer, you can either choose to do it over here where you've got your loops, or you can just do it right here. 5 goes into 32 6 times. 6 times 5 is 30. 5 goes into 25 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Your decimal goes straight up. Notice your decimal goes straight up after it got moved. Originally my decimal was here, but it gets moved once to the right and then it goes straight up. Alright, let's check it out near the bottom of the page. Anthony spent $11.62 for some pens that were on sale for 72 cents each. How many pens did Anthony buy? If I were doing this from scratch, I would make it look like this. I'm going to do this one as neat as I can, but I'm going to leave the loops. It's going to look a little tiny bit messy. 11 and 52/100 divided by 0 and 72. Remember that you can't have a decimal in the divisor, so we multiply it by 10. Actually, in this case, we multiply it by 100. If you multiply it by 10, the decimal would be right here. It'd be 7.2. That's still a decimal, so you have to move it twice. That's multiplying by 100. So the decimal is here now. Whatever you do to the divisor, you have to do to the dividend. So I'm going to multiply this by 100, which means to move the decimal 2 places to the right. I now have 1,152 divided by 72. 72 does not go into 1 or 11, but it does go into 115 once. If I tried to do that twice, it'd be 144. So I do 1 times 72 is 72. Subtract 5 minus 2 is 3, and 11 minus 7 is 4. Bring down the 2. How many times does 72 go into 432? I think 6, because 6 times 7 is 42. So I'm going to try 6 here. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 7 is 42, plus 1 is 43. And you get 0. Now this decimal that got moved over then goes straight up to right here, which means my answer is 16 point, which is the same thing as 16. And it asked about how many pens. The answer is 16 pens. Cool. Let's go check out the your turn. I'm going to use this whiteboard right here to solve these so I have tons of space. Number 5, I think you should try these and then check your answers. 4 and 25/100 divided by 0 and 5/10. And this is similar to our first one, where you can't divide by a decimal. So we have to make this a whole number by multiplying by a power of 10. And if we do that to the dividend, or decimal, if we do that to the divisor, we have to do that to the dividend. So I move that one place to the right. Now I have 5 goes into 42 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. How many times does 5 go into 25? It goes into 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Now very precisely go and look at what you did with your decimal. It got moved from here to there, and then it goes straight up, so it's 8.5. If you're ever unsure about that, I trust you not to cheat, but to use your calculator as a checking device. 4 and 25/100 divided by 0 and 5/10 is 8 and 5/10. That's the right answer. Number 6 looks a little bit more complicated just because it's longer, but that's okay. I'll help you. We've got 15 and 12/100 being divided by 84/100. 84/100 is a decimal. It needs to become a whole number, so I move my decimal 2 places to the right. If I do that to the divisor, I have to do that to the dividend. So my decimal is way out here now. Now I've got 1 divided by 84 doesn't work. 15 divided by 84 doesn't work. 151 divided by 84 is 1. If I tried to do 2 84s, it'd be 168. So it's going to be 1 times 84 is 84. Now I have to subtract. I'm going to borrow and get 11 minus 4 is 7. And 14 now minus 8 is 6. Bring down this 2. Now I got to ask myself, how many times is 84 going to 672? I think it might be 8. 8 times 8 is 64, so I'm going to try 8. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 8 is 64. Plus 3 is 67, so I guessed right. So I'm done here, dividing because I got a remainder of 0. My decimal got moved over here, and then it goes straight up. So the answer is 18 point, which is the same thing as 18. I guess I should record my answers on the lines here. 8.5 and 18. Check your answer. Oh, this would be a good one to check using multiplication. 0 and 84/100 times 18 needs to be my dividend. It needs to be 15 and 12/100. And it is. Cool. All right, you're done with page 127.